Okay, so we've calculated, or we've actually set up a spreadsheet, very basic spreadsheet in an earlier tutorial, and we actually looked at you guys calculating the average weights of those animals. So in the end we ended up with, I'm just going to have to recalculate this. This is pretty much the same spreadsheet, but I've just modified it to have some different weights in there. So I'm just going to go sum, click and drag down over what I want to sum up, and press enter, and it's now recalculated my average weight there to nearly 5.2 kilos. So up here, if you do want to round up and round down, we can just click on the buttons up here. This one's getting rid of my decimal points. This one's adding my decimal points. So it depends on the accuracy we need, and typically just for this purpose I'll round it up to the nearest decimal point. Alright, so occasionally we want to bring extra information in to modify our spreadsheet. For instance, we might want to add or remove data completely, or we might just want to remove data so it's not confusing us. And typically that's what I like to see people do, is to remove data but leave it there so that we can utilise it running in the background, for instance. So it's just out of sight, out of mind, so to speak. So if we want to remove this species data up here, just because we don't really need it for this period of time, but we may need it later on down the track. So to remove it without getting rid of it, if I go up to the reference column D, right click on it with my mouse button, there's this hide and unhide option here. So if I click on hide, it's completely removed it from the visual representation of it, and I want to get rid of the broom stuff as well, so I can just click on hide. Now I've got this situation where all I've got is my numbers, for instance. Alright, but I actually want to bring in another column without directly modifying the sheet, so not having that copy and paste and move things around. I can actually just go up to here, and I want my number of my fish, I want my weight, but I also want now a length in there, right? So go back up to the column where I want to insert a complete column. So I want a complete data set inserted there. I can just go insert, label it as length, alright, and then I've got a column there that I can now utilise without actually having modified anything down here. So my data set's still giving me the same numbers, but I've just inserted a column. So I've actually shifted everything across one column so that we haven't actually modified too much there in terms of any formulas or anything like that. So everything's still functioning correctly. Alright, so here I've got a data set hidden here which has my lengths in it. I just had to prepare a little bit. So to do an unhide, I notice that there's a Q and an S. I'm actually missing my R column. If I remove that column completely, it'll still be QRS, alright? But if I've hidden it, I'm going to have a gap in my data up here. So over here where I hit a column, I've got A, B, C, D. Alright, I'll go straight to G. What's going on there? It just means that I've got two hidden columns behind there. So if I left click and drag over Q and S, and then right click, go unhide, my data pops up now. Alright. So what I want to do with this data is move it to another part on the spreadsheet. So I've got two ways to do that. I can copy and paste it, so I can go left click and drag over my whole data set, right click, copy, and then right click and paste my numbers. So I can do it that way. Or some guys don't want to do it that way, so you can left click and drag over your whole data set, and then it's highlighted, yeah? And then we'll see our cross change to a different cross again. So before, when we were down the bottom right hand corner, our cross changes to this solid black cross. If I click anywhere in my border, black border there, my cross changes to a 4-pointed arrow, right? That means I can move my data set wherever I want it. I can move it to there. I don't want it there. I want it back here. No, actually, I really do. I want it over here where it's supposed to be. Alright. So now I've moved my data from over here to the column it's supposed to be in. Alright. Now, nothing's changed on the averages over here because I'm not referencing up here any of that data that I've just moved into there. So our data is still the same. Alright, so we've got our data sitting side by side, and this is pretty standard fisheries management data, and we can actually use this in aquaculture too to get an example of how long my fish are as to how heavy they weigh. So we can actually utilise this as a really relevant tool for both fisheries management and aquaculture. So I want to chart this because the theory is that as your fish grows in length, it's going to gain weight. We can't have really short fish with really hefty weights, depending on, actually we might have a physiological size of a fish might be short and it's heavy, but that's the physiological nature. But there is a corresponding correlation between length and weight. And we'll demonstrate this on a line chart. So to incorporate a chart, you have to think about what you want to use. All right. So we're going to use length and weight to calculate, or to show us a representation. Does our weight increase with our length? All right. So we can do this in two ways. We can just use a simple line chart, or we can use what's called a scatter plot or a regression chart. Alright, so what we want to do is highlight, left click and drag over your full data set. So left click and drag, alright, and leave it highlighted. Go up to insert, and the first one we'll do is a line chart. Alright, so we'll just go in and we'll put our line chart in there, and that's not done what I wanted it to do. Alright. Alright, so that's not what I wanted it to do. What I wanted to do is rank my weight against my length. So to do that, I need them to all be in numerical order, I guess you might say. So rank from the lowest to the highest. So to do that, I left click and drag over the whole data set or the field that we want to do. And then we go up to this sort and filter button. So what it's going to do is now put everything, when I get into here, go sort smallest to largest, and then click on it, and now each length is its corresponding weight from smallest to largest, right? So that's going to give us a nice numerical order in which we can do things. Alright, so it should give us a nice representation on our graph when we get through it. So left click and drag over the whole lot, insert, we'll go to a line graph for now. Alright, and then we're going to click on this one here because it's the easiest one to understand. And you'll notice that we've got this trend of the orange, the red stuff. So that's our weight. And then we've got this flat line along the bottom, which is essentially our length, right? So that's kind of not what I wanted my chart to look like. I just wanted a line on the chart that represents length, weight against length or length against weight. So what I want to do now is, it's kind of not referencing the data the way that I want to do it. So select data up here. So go up to, from here up to select data in the little tool panel. Select data, and then you've got these two series here. So series 1 is referencing actually my length. Alright, so I just want to remove that. So remove length from there. Alright. And now it's basically giving me my weight against my number of fish, which I also don't want. So here we've got our weight series. So we can rename that, I think, or maybe not. So series 2 anyway is our weight series, and it's on the horizontal category. You'll notice that it's got numbers, all right? So it's essentially calculating out the number of fish that we had, not what we want to be doing in terms of the length. All right, so if I go to edit and then over to here and left click and drag over the total length field that we have, you'll see it pop up over here. All right, and I go okay. It should modify my chart now to basically have my length against my weight, or my weight against my length. All right, so to make it a bit easier to read, I can just left click drag on the bottom of my chart, this portion here, which I can make it skinnier, I can make it wider, I can make it fatter. So that's just a left click and drag function. Alright, so now I've got a line graph that's showing that we've got a general trend towards an increase in length along the axis, gives us an increase in weight. Alright, so that's just a bit of a quick depiction on it, but we may also want to get some powerful information out of a chart as well. So I'll show you how to do that now with a regression analysis or a scatter plot. Alright, so I've just reverted my sheet. I've just gone back and Control-Z'd and undone everything, so that now I've got my sheet back to how it was. So everything's pretty much in a random order as we've calculated, and we measured our fish coming out of the water. But I don't want to basically sort my information. All I want to do is just scatter my information onto a chart and then apply a formula to it at a later date. So if I go insert, so left click and drag over this again to get your highlighted information. Go up to insert, and this time we want to go scatter. Alright, so if I put my scatter plot in, alright, it's given me a really strong correlation, I guess you might say, between data points. The only one that might be missing is this little sucker here and this one up here potentially, and potentially we would remove those because we would call them an outlier and they may bias your information. So we may even choose to remove those if we wanted to be really pedantic about how our data is going to work, and I'll show you that in a second. So basically, the tighter and closer that each dots are together, the stronger our information is going to be. If it's scattered out all over the page, it gives us a general indicator. But if we've got this tight function, as you're seeing here through here, it's basically saying that we've got really good representation, that our length and our weight correlate really heavily together. But what scientists typically want to do is to put a formula against that, and to do that I need to figure out how to get in there. Alright, and it's actually right click on your chart, so just straight in on your chart, right click and add trend line. Alright, just because it's pretty much a linear equation, so we're assuming that length and weight correlate directly together, we can just use a linear equation. Alright. And then what we want to have here is display equation on chart and set the R squared value. Alright. So without too much confusing information, the big thing here is that we can utilize this information from the Y to model information on the data that we've pulled out of our populations of fish. And the R squared value, it's basically a statistical formula that suggests that 94% of our fish essentially are going to fall within this equation, this Y equation, essentially. So we can basically say that if we use this Y formula to calculate out a length-weight comparison for a length-weight ruler, for instance, we can be 94% accurate that whatever fish we pull out of that water is going to fall within the calculations from that ruler. Alright, so with that confidence rating, I guess, we can modify that confidence rating, that 94% that we have there, by deleting these data points that I think we would consider as outliers. So this guy up here that's saying he's 9.4 kilo fish at 135 centimetres, and this guy down here that's saying he's a 65 centimetre fish at 6,217 grams. If I just click on that data point, actually what I'll do is I'll recreate a new chart. So let's go do this again. So left click and drag over our chart, insert, scatter. Alright, so we just created a new chart. Alright, and we'll just see how much the chart modifies when our formula here changes when I remove these two data points. So close that. I should be able to double click on a single data point and delete it, and that hasn't happened. Alright, Control Z. Let's find out what that data point is. So 0.656217. So if I go across to 656217 and I actually go in and I remove that entire row. Alright, so I don't want that row in there anymore. Cancel, sorry, delete row. Alright, it's moved my data point over here. It's no longer, not there. And if I look at this one here as well, I want to remove that one. It's 135.9. So it's going to be at the top end anyway. So 135. This guy up here, so it's number 5. Sorry, number 6. and I delete that entire row, I've now removed those 2 outliers. So they're actually removed off both charts now. You idiot, Benno. Alright, so you can now see that removing those 2 outliers from there, we've actually increased our confidence, I guess you might say, that our formula is going to be correct any time that I weigh a fish out of a sample population. So we've gone from 94% essentially to a 98% concentration, confidence, sorry. So 98 there, 98 roughly refers to 98%. If I Control Z, it brings us back to 94%. So you can see removing those outliers, the ones that you can visually depict as probably not really fitting into the overall equation. So these ones are all tight, and then this one here kind of sits out, and this one here kind of sits out. So removing them has just increased our accuracy, I guess, or the predictability that when we choose a sample from a population against the formula that we might use up here, this Y formula, we can be ever more confident that what we're using is accurate.